All right, so let's get started. Hello everyone, thanks for being here. So today I'm gonna talk a bit about Android 12. I'll be speaking about how to migrate from Android whatever to Android 12. My talk is entitled, One Does Not Simply Migrating to Android 12, because there were a lot of surprises when we went through the migration. All right, so a bit of me. I'm Julien Salvi. I'm the lead Android engineer at Aircall, startup based in Paris, in New York, and in Australia now, building a cloud-based phone system. And I'm also an Android GD. I'm part of the Paris Android user group, like listening punk music and drinking IPAs. And you can follow me on Twitter. All right, so first bit disclaimer here. So we are going to talk about Android 12, how to migrate to a new version. So I'm going to share some tips to migrate from a version to a new one. I'll speak about the API changes that were introduced for Android 12. And then I will share some tricks and tips for a successful migration to Android 12. So this will be the topics of the talk, but I won't go into like a deep implementation of all the API changes and what was introduced for Android 12, and I won't speak about Lord of the Rings. So this won't be part of the talk. Okay, so let's start with a bit of introduction and let's discover what's Android 12 and what this version brings to Android. Okay, so let's have an overview of the Android 12 roadmap. So it all started like beginning of 2021. So the first developer previews made them public. So we were able like to play with them, see the new APIs, and maybe be prepared for what's next. Then, starting with between May and August, we have the beta release, so like a much more kind of almost stable APIs, so almost definitive APIs we can play with. And back in October, so Android 12 was released and made stable. And a few months ago, the Android team introduced the new API level requirement. So now every Android version has a 2 years life cycle. So which means if you don't target Android 12 by November 2023, your app won't be able to be discovered on the Play Store, and so user won't be able to download your application because your application won't be targeting the last version, the last stable version. So this will be introduced for Android 12, so beginning of November 2023, and then all the other versions will also have like a 2 years life cycle. So I highly recommend like to update your application to the latest API. So there's a link here, so you can check all the whole documentation about this new API requirement. So that's a thing you must know if you still want to publish your application on the Play Store. All right, so if we take a look now at the Android developer website, so having through all the APIs and stuff, you have a bit of an idea of what Android 12 is. So according to Google, it's more personal, safe, and effortless than ever before. All right, so let's have a look. So the highlights here for Android 12 is like personal, safe, effortless. Let's focus first on the personal side of Android 12. All right, so personal, it means that we have introduced Material 3 and Material U for building your new application, so version 3 of Material Design, and the version of Material U, which means like you can personalize the color and the theme of your application based on, for example, the backdrop or the wallpaper you have on your device. Also new design for components, much more flat design, also big round corners. Also, one very nice thing here with the Glance API, there's a new way and a new API to build Android widgets, which are like, it's a bit refreshing because the API was like quite old and not very user-friendly. You were not able like to customize a lot these widgets. And if you have a splash screen, now there is a splash screen API like to make a nice splash screen for your app. Okay, so that's the personal side of Android. Now let's see a bit about what's make Android 12 safer. So with Android 12, we have now an indicator for the microphone and the camera. So when an application uses the microphone or the camera, you'll see the little icon at the top of your device, saying like, okay, one of the application in my device is using the microphone. There's also some changes in the location. So now the user has the ability to share his precise location or an approximate location. So you might need like to handle these two cases now because the user might not want to share his precise location. When you build your application, you must be aware of that. Might be approximate, so either you can handle things on your side, or it's really needed to have a precise location. Tell a new flow to your user that why you need the precise location. Also, there is some new runtime permission, and one thing we face most with our application is like the Bluetooth permission at runtime now with Android 12 and above. Also, in your application and in your device, you can find all the listed permission used with your application. And also, you can delete all. Well, after a while, if your application doesn't use if the application is not used for like 3 months or so, the permission gets removed after this period of time. So this kind of safer for the user. If the application is not in use, all the permission will be removed. Okay, so now let's go to the last point, which is effortless. Well, maybe for a user point of view, it's nice, it has a nice UI, you can navigate through all the parameters, go to your apps and so on. But, well, the migration itself and Android 12 itself, it's not so simple for developers. Okay, so now we have a kind of overview. I said it was not simple migration, so I will tell you a story of a migration to Android 12. And yeah, one does not simply migrating to Android 12. Is it that complicated, really? Yes. Actually, depends on the stack you are using on Android, but it starts like to be a bit harsh, even for like just a basic application. If you're not using Bluetooth, Telephony stack, or other things, even if you are using just notifications, there is an impact with Android 12. So, what do we need to check at first? So tip number 1, I'll be sharing maybe some Captain Obvious tips, but anyway, it's always good to know these kind of tips. Tip number 1, check the documentation. So when we go to the developer Android website, you have like a list of Android Trust features and all the changes that were introduced for this version. So if I go to this website, on here, you have all the changes introduced for Android 12. So you can sort it by category if you want, or by type if it's applied to all the apps or only the apps targeting Android 12. If you target Android 12, you see there are a lot of changes. So through this, you can take a look at all the changes, if it has an impact or not on your application. Okay, so back to the slide now. Okay, so now we went through the documentation. We know some stuff about the migration. So let's start migrating our application to Android 12. So first, we're going to update the Gradle build file and target the API 31. And then we're going to update our build tools as well. Well, not needed anymore for if you are using most recent Gradle build tools. Let's compile the application, and then, boom, crash. So we check the logcat, and we see this kind of error in our logcat. So manifest merger failed. The Android exported need to be explicitly specified for any activity when your apps target Android 12 or higher. So let's have a look at the manifest now. So when you see the little lock at the top left, it will be about security. So right here now, when you are building your application, all services, receiver, and activities must specify the exported attribute. So for security reason, especially if you are building SDKs for clients and so on, you must specify if your service can be exported or if it's just for you, so it will be exported at false. And if your application implement an intent filter, so if your activity implement an intent filter, it must be exported if it's your launcher activity, for example, or in an SDK if the activity can be started through like a third-party application. So we set all the exported attributes in our manifest. We compile the app, and then, boom, again, we got like a crash in the logcat. Okay, so we have the same error, but it comes from an external library. We use a lot of them in our apps, so to do the tricks, you can update the manifest. So with the service that is not exported yet with the SDK, the third-party library might not be up to date, so we can like add the service or the activity or the broadcast receiver that is not exported. And thanks to the little tool node, so we're gonna set it at merge. So this will override the service or the activity that has been defined in the SDK manifest. So we check all we must check like all the SDK or the first-party library we are using in the application that might be causing some trouble for our application. So we see few services, few activity, we merge it in the manifest, then we compile and crash again. So this is like a big piece of code, but you can find the whole thing with the link just below here. So we're gonna use like a bit of Gradle script here to check for each third-party library which component is exported or not. This will help us like to migrate a bit faster and check what is missing and what needs to be exported with our application. So we're gonna use this function with Gradle, to be focused on the real thing. So we're gonna iterate on each activity alias, and service and receiver. So everything that needs to be exported. And then for each one, we're gonna check if the Android exported attribute is defined or not. And the condition here is to check if the activity, services, and so on uses the intent filter, because this needs to be exported literally. So every time we have a new service, activity, and so on that is found for this match, we're gonna print it in our logcat and see. So we'll have the list of all components that needs to be exported. Okay, so once we have all the things, we define all the services, activities in our manifest, we compile and good to go. Our application compiles and the application is running on our device on Android 12. But after using the app for a while, we saw like a big crash. Why? Because we receive a notification. We saw in the logcat this error, so an illegal argument exception. And when you are targeting Android 12, you must specify the flag mutable or flag mutable for your pending intent. So, that's something we missed at first, but actually if you look at the documentation, we should be aware of using this new flag. Okay. So now let's update our pending intent for our notification. So now we must specify if like there is an immutable pending intent or like a mutable data. So now this mutability flag must be specified to properly handle the notification that are using pending intents. And this is an important change for the notification. Also, regarding pending intent, when you are targeting Android 12, so you have to target the latest version of the work manager library, because this dependency is very tight to pending intent, so you have to update to the latest version in order to use your work manager. Also, you need to check all other third-party libraries you are using, because if they use some pending intent thing, it will break your application. Check if all the SDKs are up to date, targeting Android 12 and so on, because this is not a thing like all the work we done with the manifest. This can't be fixed by your own code. So the library must be up to date. Otherwise, you won't be able to migrate to Android 12, and you'll be stuck with the version you are in. Okay, so we also use some, I will say, a bit dirty things here. In our application, we were using this intent in order to close all the system dialogues. Before Android 12, it was possible, but you got a warning in your logcat saying, you were not supposed to use this intent. And yeah, from Android 12, if you call this this broadcast with this intent, in order like to close all the system dialogues from your application, it will raise a security exception and it will crash your application. So if you use that, you should remove it, and it's not like a really good move to use this kind of intent. All right, so we are like halfway, so I'll share a new tip. Don't be afraid like to run lint analysis on your code base in order to detect some errors, some deprecated method that can cause some trouble with the new Android version. And the most difficult one for us was to face the new Bluetooth permissions. So before Android 12, there was just one Bluetooth permission, so permission Bluetooth. We were not asking anything to the user, it was just defined in the manifest. But now, with Android 12, there is two new permissions. So there is the Bluetooth Connect permission and the Bluetooth scan. We are not using the Bluetooth scan, I just focus on the Bluetooth Connect permission. So this is a break change here, because now Bluetooth must be asked to the user if they want to use the Bluetooth. And it's at runtime, so this introduces a new flow to your users and say, okay, we're gonna use the Bluetooth to connect to your headset in order to play some music or to get some calls and so on. So you have to think about this new user flow. Yeah, so as I said, now we must ask the user to allow the application to use the Bluetooth. So if your app is at least Android S, you request the new Bluetooth Connect permission, for example. But yeah, we've seen a lot of things around Bluetooth, and our head was quite exploding back in time. So a bit of context here. We wanted like to connect the device to the Bluetooth headset of the user, and we are using the Bluetooth API in order to get the device name, just like to be labeled on the screen to check, okay, you are on the call with this headset. But we are not using the Bluetooth API to actually route the audio to the device itself. So yeah, bit complex, isn't it? Yeah, so let's have a look at Android Studio. Up. So right here, we have our Bluetooth broadcast receiver. And if I uncomment this thing here, you can see that the lint error here. So as we are using only the device name, it requires the Bluetooth Connect. When we are using the Bluetooth API, even if you just want access to the name, for example, here the implementation on the Android stack. So you see the required permission, Bluetooth Connect. So if you just want to get the name of the device, the permission is required. But so we just ask the user to give the Bluetooth permission just to get the name. But in fact, I think it might be an error of implementation, or I don't know what's behind this. But if you want to get the device name without the Bluetooth permission, it's still possible. For example, if you go through the audio manager, you can get a list of all the devices that are connected to your device. You can sort it. So let's say by type by Bluetooth headset, and there you can get the name of the device without any issue. And it doesn't require the Bluetooth permission. So using the Bluetooth permission, it will require new permission. And if you go with the audio manager, no permission required, and you can access the device name. So we ask the user to give the Bluetooth Connect permission, but we found this new way of getting the device name. So when with permission, when without permission. All right, let's get back to the slide. Come on. All right. So the Bluetooth was a bit harsh, and it introduced for our user a new flow to ask the permission on the onboarding screen or before starting a call. So after Bluetooth, now there is a new tip. Don't be afraid to explore the Android code source and associated libraries. Go to AOSP, check Android X libraries and so on. It can highlight maybe the changes that were made for the stack you are using, and all the tiny changes that can be pushed for third-party libraries. So now let's take a look at Android 12 and the performance changes. There are a few, but few impactful changes. Subtle but impactful improvements. All right, so the first one I want to talk about, we faced that few months ago. We were using this kind of trampoline effect notification. So we were using our notification, so when you click on the notification, it uses a service or a broadcast receiver to go to an activity. We saw that when you are using Android 12, this effect is now forbidden, and we were not able to start the activity. So it was a bit of a problem when you want to open our call application and go on the in-call activity, for example. So now this trampoline effect is forbidden, and you must specify the activity you want to go in your pending intent. So what's the trampoline effect here? I defined a new broadcast receiver, for example. On the unReceive function, I called my context.start activity. So I will start a random activity here, but from a broadcast receiver. And then when I build my notification, so define the icon, title, and so on, I define also my broadcast intent, to go to this activity. I just defined in the broadcast receiver. And when I pass this intent to the notification, I build my notification, but when I'm doing that and targeting Android 12, the activity won't start on most devices. So, and you'll see on the lookout, a warning says, okay, you are trying indirect notification, so you shouldn't use these kind of things to go to your new activity and avoid the trampoline effect to gain in performance. Okay, so how to fix it? It's really simple. So you define your activity intent. So here, my random activity, and we're gonna create the pending intent directly with that activity intent. So might attach a parent tag, and then building my pending intent with the mutability flag that should not be forgotten here. And then the trampoline effect is gone, and we are good to go with this kind of restriction. And the start of the activity will be much faster than the old way to go through a service or broadcast receiver. All right, another thing about performances in Android 12 are the foreground services. Now with Android 12, it's forbidden to launch services while the app is in background. If you try to do like define an intent and then, okay, my content start foreground intent while my application is in background, you'll get a fatal exception here. Says that you are not allowed to start foreground services when your application is in background. Alternatively, you can use expedite work from Work Manager. It will work seamlessly. It's a perfect replacement for for this kind of use case. All right, we're gonna get through the last tip here, and it's a big one. Test, 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 always test to avoid surprises, and sometimes bad surprises, as we experienced a few months ago. You need to test everything, the whole flow of your application when you upgrade to a new version of Android. Even after the supposed complete migration, we found some surprises. Yeah, we didn't expect that changes when we looked at the documentation. And the most surprising things came from the Telephony stack. Actually, we are building a phone application. And I think this is maybe the least documented part of Android. There was nothing on the documentation, so we were trying like to do things on our own, like checking the code source and so on. So let's see what was the surprise from the Telephony stack. Okay, so we check out the migration git for Android 12, and we saw nothing related to phone, no telephony stack, and so on. So, okay, no lint errors when we launch the analysis, but there's like a deprecated method here. So let's check on Android Studio. Okay, so this is our use of the telecom manager and the telephony stack. So we are using this method. We are still using, by the way, this method to get the state of a call, to say if we are already in call with our native application. And this method is deprecated here, but apart from that, I don't get any warning, except that it's deprecated, no error or so. And when we check the actual source code of this method, you see the required permission here. And for Android 12, if we check the documentation, requires permission read phone state for the API 31 and above. So the thing is, there is a conditional true, so it's just for Android 12 and above. And on the Android Studio side, it doesn't tell any error here. Even if we are targeting Android 12, it's just a deprecated method, but no error like to tell, okay, you have to specify this new permission. As it's conditional, you just like need to go deep in the documentation and deep in the code source to check if there is an actual permission that is needed or not. And that was quite a surprise because we were like not able like to make calls anymore, so it was a bit tricky here. Okay, so let's move back to the slides. All right. To finish, the big things to keep in mind while you are migrating your application. Okay, so the main key points here is test beta versions as soon as possible to be prepared for your next migration. Be aware that third-party library can break your application if they are not up to date. And be aware of deprecated method that can lead to maybe new permission and can break your application as well. And also go check the Android source code from time to time. It will allow you to avoid this kind of mistakes and check if there is some mandatory permission for Android 12, 13, and so on. So just to finish, a bit of resources here. As usual, the Android 12 documentation, quite nice to migrate to your new version. The Android code search in order to search some part of the Android framework and see the code source. And then the plays API requirement I just spoke at the beginning of the talk. And one more thing, brace yourself, Android 13 is coming, and it's going to be a new big one with runtime permission for notifications, mostly. Thanks a lot, and good luck with your migration.